Oh, hello, and welcome to another live session here at Rhino's Computer Service. Instead of talking about stuff in the office and a bunch of nonsense, I thought it'd be kind of interesting to talk about some of the interesting things going on in my other place of work. This is this is kind of a mind blowing shock. Never would have saw the day that the church I work for would ever get air conditioning. Because this is last year around this time, a friend stopped up from Green Bay, stopped over to see how I was doing and stuff like that. We've been friends for a long time, and we went over across the street to the local bar and had a drink. And I was joking around with them like, "Yeah, I could see the church that I work for closing before they ever got air conditioning." And had a good laugh with the bartender. And unbeknownst to me, the elders of the church voted on air conditioning, and today the local contractor from the next town over was installing Panasonic split unit air conditioning, and I was just kind of like, "Wow, I never saw this coming." And the thought in my head was that would probably cost a little over $100,000, but from the invoice that was sitting on my desk, it was only about 28,000 total to put 7 units in. Since it's a non-for-profit organization, they don't do any tax, so that's a real benefit. And I was just kind of a little shocked for being a historical church that they would deface it by putting air conditioning in the church. It's not like they're going to cut major holes in the wall, but it just the building was built in like 1907, and it's at this point in time, if you were to put it on a historical or national historical church, it will no longer qualify because basically those air conditioning units on the outside of the building, or the heat pumps rather, kind of deface the look of the building. But that wasn't my choice. It was either that or sometimes it gets so hot in there during the summertime during a church service that there's actually a few people that actually passed out because it got so hot in there. Even though they have like 6 windows that they can open, and they got ceiling fans, like six ceiling fans from the back of the church up to the front of church, and that wasn't enough. So then they got two big industrial 36-inch fans for the front, and that wasn't enough. It only circulated the air in the front of up by the sanctuary, and that's and each fan had about a 2 amp motor. So you figure if you ran them on high or both on high, holy, there's still people that didn't feel good. So what I did is I concocted, dragged every single box fan, pedestal fan, floor fan. And our church, or the church that I work for, has a very limited amount of receptacles. So gathered up all the extension cords I could find, and if the inspector came through there and saw the way that I set up all those fans, it probably would have condemned the church. Well, it's not something I should joke about. On a realism, if the fire department saw that, or an inspection agency, with the way that when I ran the extension cords, I ran them. I didn't use chintzy ones. I didn't use ones or household ones. I used at minimum 16 gauge. Some were like 14 gauge for the heavier fans, but for the smaller fans, they're 16 grounded cords. And no, I didn't daisy chain them together in such a dangerous fashion. I made sure that I distributed the load. Because basically, throughout the middle of the church, there's only 2 receptacles, 1 per side. So, since there's several radiators, what I ended up doing is put like a couple of floor fans in the corners, and then in the back, which they refer to as not an atrium, but the more politically correct way of putting it. Darn it! I just lost the word for vestibule. That's what they call the back of the church, is the vestibule, which theoretically is the front of the building, but in the church they refer to it as the back of the building. And they can, even know that at the front sure the cord is nice and tight. And then if the radiator is there, you just kind of carefully put it around the edge where it meets the wall. And with enough creativity and enough logical thinking, you can pull. Now, if I really wanted to get even more creative, I would have painted the neon orange cords like a beige to match the walls. But I didn't really feel like doing that, and I'd probably, if I was gonna go to that much trouble, I would just assume go down to Menards or Fleet Farm or Lowe's or Walmart or Sears or any store and just look for a cord color that matched the wall. But nobody really cared. They just wanted cool or air blowing on them. It's more of a psychological thing than it really does helping. So you put like 2 pedestal fans, one on one side of the elevator and one on the other side of the elevator, and then you put one in the other corner, and then you put one at all the entrances. So when people come in, they feel the breeze blowing on, and they're just like, ah, that's better. Well, there's better ways of doing things, but when you're on a limited budget and you're trying to do things as low cost as possible, you kind of go to those extents. And in the choir loft, where they would sing the gospel and all the other wild stuff that they do, all the wild music, and I had a couple of big fans up there that I rigged up, but there was only 1 receptacle up there. So, and of course, it was in the middle of the choir loft. So, what carefully had to do is run an extension cord across the floor, and it's theoretically you shouldn't do that, but we don't want the crazy people up there singing to pass out because it's so hot, which is actually, the higher you go up in the summertime, the hotter it gets. You go up in the attic above the church, and it probably gets about 110 degrees up there, because it's not only is it like a black interior up there, but it's also brick up there, and the brick holds the heat. So you could almost fry some eggs up there if you wanted to, and maybe slap a little bacon down with it, but I don't advise doing it, especially not up there. The building is old enough, and if you're not careful up there, you could lose your footing and fall down inside the wall. And wouldn't that make an interesting story for the elders to talk about? They'd be like, yeah, did you see that guy? He fell down inside the wall while trying to fry bacon and eggs up there. That'd be an interesting story. So basically now with the air conditioning, the next thing that I should do is contractor that was appointed. I should get a hold of the company and also have the air handler in the basement upgraded because it's very inadequate for heating and cooling. Personally, what I would have done instead of the only problem is with the layout of the building and the way everything's laid out. If you've there's two different approaches you could have took, but you'd have to repipe everything. What could have been done was a chiller being installed on the outside of the building, and then just not use the boilers in the summer for heating, but you would just use them for cooling. But they don't have the right piping to pull that off. And all those radiators, you'd have to take those radiators out and put convectors in, and then you'd have to hire master electricians come in and hook up a power panel strictly for those convectors. Because that's a 480 amp or 400 amp distribution panel down in the basement there, so there's plenty of room on. We're probably only using about, as a 400 amp is the main for everything. 200 amps, there's one 200 available. Actually, there's two 200s, and there's a couple 100s on there, and there's a bunch of oddball ones. It's like one's for the elevator, one's for the church kitchen, and there's one for the church lights. Well, you're thinking just lights? Yeah, some of those lights are like over 1,000 watts, and to have them tied into a regular circuit breaker or 100 amp panel, he'd be asking for a lot of breakers tripping out on you. And so it's just best to have it on its own power disconnect. And then there's the school used to be tied in at one point, and that's no longer tied in. It's on its own underground feed. And then there used to be a convent on the property back in '93 that got torn down. That was way before I started employment there. And then there used to be another school building on the property, and that got torn down around the same time. But that was abandoned. And then there's another rectory. Well, current rectory that's there now, that one has its own power feed. And so did the other one that was on there, but that one got demolished because it basically fell apart, to my understanding. But this one isn't in much better shape either. It could use some minor structural work to the foundation and some tuck and point work, like around the garage, around the north side of the house, and then part of the west side of the building could use some minor structural work, but it's not really a priority at this point because nobody's living there. It's just used as office and for meetings and that kind of thing. And if somebody were to live in there, you would need all new plumbing, because a lot of the plumbing that's in there is pretty much original to the 30s. There used to be a cistern in that house, but that got abandoned. That got turned into a regular storage room. And a lot of the electrical wiring that's in that house should be condemned and upgraded to new wiring. It's all the old cloth covered stuff, and a lot of the cloth wiring is unraveling, and it could potentially be a danger if messed with. And it's sometimes it's just not adequate. The electrical in that house is not adequate for what the needs are anymore for modern everyday living. It's bad enough when you're working out in the garage, and every time you run your saber saw or your jigsaw, you're running a table saw, that the lights completely dim and brown out while running. So that tells me that it's just not there's just not enough oomph and not enough amperage to run. But when you have half of the house tied into a circuit, it kind of tells you, kind of puts the writing in the wall, telling you that maybe it's time to do something different or upgrade the existing service. Or well, the service itself is fairly new. That was only put in maybe 16, 17 years ago. So it's not, as far as the breakers in that's all code. It's just the way everything is wired together and daisy chained together. It's not a good setup. But as far as the rest of the house, like the structure, the wood, the steps, it needs more cosmetic work than anything else. A lot of the plaster's got cracks in the walls. Other than there's a soil pipe that needs to be replaced going up to the bathroom. But it pretty much showed. One contractor already quoted us like close to 20,000 to completely redo that whole bathroom. But that pretty much new window, new new shower stall, exhaust fan, new light fixtures, floor. They do something with the walls. They would tear out all the moldy plaster and put up like a cement board in there with a mildewcide paint. New toilet and fixtures, and so that, for 20,000 you're getting quite a bit of work done. And that was the cheapest quote. Some of them wanted like 23, 24. Okay, so why was I thinking 20,000? That's a little steep there, but I was thinking that's what they wanted for some of the for a different project in the rectory. Actually, that was something in the church. Actually, rather, I'd have to look back at what the rectory what it costed, but it's not all that important at this point in time. Well, since we had a very generous anonymous donator that donated a large lump sum of money. This year we had actually over the last couple of years we had a lot of major work done to the building. Back in 2014 and or 2013, 14, and 15, there's a lot of tuck and point work that was done. I'm not going to name names, but the contractor that was doing that work really did a half-ass job. I mean, really did a crappy job. There's a bunch of flashing and transitional pieces that needed to be replaced, and all they did is just slap a glue a bunch of little pieces of tin together and paint over and hope nobody would notice, and just kind of And it wasn't even weatherproofing caulk. It was just basically it was like a silicone or something. But there's better ways of fixing stuff than just gluing it down and slapping a little coat of paint on it and hoping that nobody would ever catch on to stuff like that. Or I understand that the brick on the building, now they would have spent like two more instead of spending 6 cents per brick if they would have just spent 8 cents per brick for more hardened brick. You would have had to paint the church building. So in 2016, they hired a painter from the surrounding area that was an industrial painter, and he was there for about 2 months. What they did first was they pressure washed all the loose paint off. Now they would have sat there by hand and scraped each brick off by hand and everything by hand. It probably would have been over $1 million worth of work. And he only quoted us 28,000 to paint the whole church, so that's what we had him do. And what's nice about the paint job on the church is when it snows out, the church actually stands out. Not in a bad way, but just kind of, it's more like not quite a colored butter, but it's like an ivory color, and it really stands out nice. So I got to give a lot of credit to the painters that came up with that color scheme because that really looks nice. And even when it rains, it's the building stands out quite well, especially if you got tinted glasses. So that was one major project. And the church basement was renovated. That was quite the undertaking in itself. Fortunately, it never got finished. So one thing that we had to do, well, there's two gentlemen that donated. I would say they probably donated at least $500,000 worth of time into the basement. And there's only a few rooms that they didn't finish. And I'm not going to get into the whole reason why they quit. That's not really, YouTube is not the place to spread out dirty laundry of why things never got completed. But basically, some of the stuff that they didn't complete. There's a room off the stage that never got painted. So me and the church sexton one Saturday, the deacon of the church donated a couple of gallons of older paint. So we sat down there on a Saturday painting the room and doing all the trimming. Didn't really cost us much to do it other than time. So we sat down there. It was actually an interesting fellowship. Let's say you belong to a church or synagogue or a temple or a mosque or a mega church or wherever you belong. It's interesting to get in a work party with the other men in the church. Not only to work together, but you kind of you feel closer to the church when you work with these people as you see every Sunday or Saturday, depending on when your pastor or reverend or minister does the service. Not only is it interesting to be part of the church, most people that go to churches, they just go for the sermon. Some go only once a year. Some go a few times a year. Some only go for the major holidays. But to go every week it's more special and more meaningful to go every week than it is just to go occasionally once or twice a year or just for the major holidays. So that's the thing is there's so much when you go to church, there's so much to offer. A lot of people, they don't think they got that attitude. Oh, I hate this. I have to go to church. I don't feel like it, but I have to go. The thing is, you shouldn't have to feel like you have to go. You should, when you go to church, you should just be glad. In this whole time when the government forced all the churches to shut down and close their doors, but shame on all the pastors and priests that didn't, and reverends and ministers that didn't fight to keep the churches open. They could have fought to keep the churches open. They really could have. They could have said, just because you told us that we can't do it doesn't mean that we're not going to stop them. Basically, it's sad that they wouldn't do that. Because you shouldn't have to worry about the reaper. God's not going to condemn people that kept the churches open. But basically, that was all involuntary. They thought they were doing humanity a favor by closing the churches, but no, you're not doing your flock a favor. You're not doing your congregation a favor by closing them. Some people, well, I'm quoting those people that sit on YouTube all day making videos saying stay at home, curl up in a ball in the corner and wail and cry, and those are the people that want churches to be closed. Those are the people that want everybody to live in fear. And the interesting thing is, it's not even the people themselves. They're just waiting for stuff like this to happen so they can sit and proclaim themselves as true people. And what I mean by that is, some of those people would be the types that would tattle on other churches for being open, tattle on other people for getting too close to one another. And there's no reason for that. It's bad enough when law enforcement keeps a close tab on what you do and if your churches are open, or they're just spying to see what you're going to do in the church. And the thing is, the churches, they claim church is non-essential, but church is an essential place to go. And the only thing that you get out of the government is, oh, we care about our people. We love our people. We don't want the people to get sick. So do us a favor and close your churches. And you can't surrender that. You gotta stay open no matter what. And even if the government threatens to take your tax exemption away over that, legally they can't do that. It's not a clause either. It's just, yeah, actually there is a clause. But the thing is, you got to fight for, because basically by surrendering to close the church, you're giving your right to reopen away. But that's, and my other computer went to sleep here. And it acts kind of goofy like that sometimes, but there's not much you can do about it. So basically, I'll just sign back in real quick. Well, that's enough about the churches being closed and that. But the other controversy is when you're closing that, you're not bringing as much income in, and chances are a lot of churches could close because if you don't have enough to pay your basic essentials of bills. And now there are some churches out there that are corrupt and that they're there for big profit, so the minister can drive a fancy Mercedes or big fancy house or big fancy wardrobe or trips all the time. Usually most people that are in the ministry are supposed to basically live in a vow of poverty. I know in the Catholic churches that's what they are supposed to portray. They're not supposed to have stockbrokers, they're not supposed to be rich, they're not supposed to. In some of the non-denomination churches, you do have some that do live the vow of poverty, and it basically when a pastor, priest, or minister live like that, it's more of a realism because a religious clergy, their life is very simple. They don't need a lot of things. Basically, you just need a roof over your head, clothes on your back, food, basic essentials. That's about it. You don't need big expensive things in a ministry. You don't need fancy cars, fancy wardrobe, taking trips all the time, big brand new cars. And even if the pastor that works at the church that I'm employed in, he only drives a 2006 Toyota Camry base trim with 250,000 miles on it. So I think he's pretty much living within his means. If there's somebody out there that thinks that he's living the high hog, I would find that extremely funny, because even the shirts that he wears them until they turn to rags. So, and he could afford to get different ones. It's just basically to prove a point that he doesn't need to have new stuff all the time. And so I got to give him a lot of credit for living a very simple life and not wrapping millions and millions and millions of dollars and stuff like that. Basically, he just makes enough just so he can throw some gas in the gas tank of his car, get it repaired when it needs to get repaired, put some food on his table, and then occasionally he would buy a shirt to replace the tattered, worn out one with holes in the collar. So if that's not living within your means, then I don't know what is. So in 2017, I'm trying to think what projects were done in the church building. I know the one year we had Raise Right come out and raise the sidewalks. They did a pretty good job. We had some of the front porch roof replaced on the rectory because it's bad enough it was leaking, and then the garage roof was done back in 18, and then a new roof over the sanctuary because the other one that was an asbestos roof, and it was pretty much end of life. And the big solution was just to dump more driveway tar over it, and hoping that you never have to do anything with it again. But shortly after a few weeks, after either it got cold or hot and expand and contract, it would still open up and then water would leak in and stain the ceiling. And so they basically just put a Duralast roof over it, and that pretty much alleviated that problem. And then this year, they had a concrete firm come in and actually last fall, we had this steeple re-roofed. That was close to 60,000, or like 55,000 rather. But from a project that was only supposed to take like 3 weeks, took up to about 3 months because they kept going through more lifts. Either it was cold or rainy. I'm not talking 20s and 30s. I'm talking like ground zero. And surprisingly, some days they went up when it was around zero. But then they ran into a lot of issues with lifts. And a lot of it, I think that the fluids froze up, and that's why some of them burned out the way they did. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. That they re-roofed that, and then this spring they came back again and replaced all the transition pieces, so that they do away with all the tackiness of how it looked. So that was important. And then finally get to the part with the one room down in the basement didn't have a decent concrete floor. They dumped years ago they dumped a bunch of mud over the top of it, and then they put a wood floor. And that wood floor was pretty much deteriorating something terrible. So then they firm that came in, they dug it all up. We had to tear the shelves out and move everything out of there, but that wasn't a big deal. So one day, once it got all tore apart, then I sat down there with the circular saw, cutting it all into smaller pieces, and so you can fit it in the dumpster. Now for that job, we probably should have got a bigger dumpster, but dumpsters are kind of expensive. So we're renting a cheap or a smaller dumpster, and it works just fine. So they put a new concrete slab down in there, and then had somebody come in and wire in some receptacles for that room, because that room didn't have any, because we're converting that room into a workroom. So eventually we'll get some wired shelves, but we're waiting on another contractor to come in and insulate the walls, put up extrude plastic on the exterior, because due to the moisture problem down there, if you put drywall or something that's all rotten in that, or painted, the paint's not going to adhere to the concrete walls very well. So you figure just paint it and be done with it. So that's something that we got to do. Still wait on the electrician to finish up the wiring lights outside. They did 1 out of 3 of them. And I'm kind of a little ticked. It's been over a month and a half now since they were appointed. I would have thought by now they would have came back and finished. The wiring is there. It's just they got to hook them up. That's all. It's not rocket science. It's just you like to see the stuff get done. Because when they said that they were ordering the stuff, I assumed that they ordered all the fixtures all at once. But maybe they just ordered one here, one there, one at this time. But it would make sense of when you're putting your order in Amazon or wherever you're going that you just order it all at once. Maybe they have different ways of doing things, but that's if I was going to order something from Amazon or something, I'd make a list of everything I needed to get, and then I'd get it all at once. I wouldn't just sit and ponder about it and go, well, I don't know. But that's another project for another day. Next year, the Bell controller and Bell tower will be next on the major agenda. Get a new Bell controller, and then the striker for the Bell will get replaced. I think we'd reuse the Bell, but all the wiring would get upgraded. And then once we're finished with that, blacktop's gonna get resealed, and then the air conditioning is a major project right now. So as far as projects, we've pretty much spent a huge wad this year. So hopefully we'll continue to get more money in, and then we can continue to do major projects that need to be done on the building. So I know we dragged this stream out way longer than I wanted to. And I'm starting to get, I'll be honest, I'm getting kind of tired. It's nearly 2 a.m. I was thinking I was going to leave by 12, go home, crawl in bed. But I kind of had the urge to get on camera and talk things over and that. So, well, thank you for sticking through the stream. God bless everybody. Keep the faith. Stay safe. And enjoy the beautiful weather if you have any sunny days. And it's nice and warm with low humidity. So y'all have a good morning, and we'll talk to you later today.